everyone. Thanks so much for hanging out with us here on the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel. I'm Gino Buccola alongside David Aragona. We're going to head out to Santa Anita for day 2 of the meet, December 27th. The feature is race number 7, the Grade 3 Robert J. Frankel, mile and an eighth on the turf course for fillies and mares, 3-year-olds and up. David, as we take a look at the field in here, we saw Hang the Moon kind of with back-to-back graded stakes wins, vault herself towards the top of the West Coast division with these fillies and mares. She then took a shot in the Breeders' Cup, but just found those foes a little bit too tough. I thought her, and I'll go with Moofy. I feel like I called her Moffy for about a year and a half, and now I'm going with Moofy. They do sort of feel like kind of the top tier of 2 horses drawn to the outside.
Yeah, it's kind of Hang the Moon against the 3-headed monster from the Jonathan Thomas barn, as he has 3 of the 7 runners entered in this race. We'll see if they all do participate, because a couple of these horses, Rashmi and Omaha Girl, are both cross-entered in the Grade 1 American Oaks one day prior on Thursday. I think Rashmi is drawn in a pretty undesirable post position in that race, so maybe that incentivizes them to run in this race instead. They came up a little bit weaker against older rivals, but Jonathan Thomas definitely holds the key to this race, not just from the result standpoint, but also potentially from how it plays out from a pace standpoint.
Yeah, because we can look at Timeform US Pace Projector. There is not that much early speed, and I think it comes down to those 2 horses that Timeform US has projected up front with Rashmi and Omaha Girl. If one of the 2 of them wanted to get aggressive, I'm sure the other one would be very content sitting second just off. That's what Omaha Girl did when winning 3 races back. Rashmi won on the front end last time out, but has been fine sitting behind horses. With both of them cross-entered, though, it is a little tricky, because I think if one of those 2 stayed in here, you'd probably want to upgrade them a little bit as being like that lone speed horse in here. I'm really hoping Rashmi runs in this race, because as you were pointing out, with the tough post, and it just feels like with the way this race shapes up, she's got a much more legitimate shot to win this thing.
Yeah, it's just not the toughest event in the world. Hang the Moon, definitely a horse that fits at this Grade 3 level, but some of the others maybe stepping up a little bit, have to prove themselves against a group like this field, and Rashmi does seem like she's got a running style that could give her an advantage in this race. We'll see how much pressure Omaha Girl applies if she starts here.
Let's meet the field here, and we'll start with the number 1, Mahina, who is a deep closer, was 4th in the Grade 3 red carpet last time out behind Miss Astor. She just hasn't really improved in her last 4 or 5 races or so, David, and she needs some pace help. And we're not sure if she's going to get it in here, so I think she's going to need to improve, and maybe we'll need to see her more aggressively handled or just get a big form reversal over some of those recent races.
Yeah, I just didn't really see the excuse last time in the red carpet when she stepped up against the Grade 3 company. That was going a mile and 3/8 around the 3 turns, so maybe that's a little far for her. She's cutting back to the mile and an eighth here, but it's not like her prior form against First Level Allowance Company really makes me want to bet her in this race. She does get a jockey upgrade to Flavien Prat, but that's going to need to improve her quite a bit to beat a group like this.
The number 2, Irish bred, in very nice form right there. Your want there, multiple stakes placed. Just doesn't have a ton of early speed in here. She's going to have to turn the tables also on a couple rivals who have outfinished her recently, like Omaha Girl, Hang the Moon, Moofy. You see all of them have outfinished her in recent races. And I think some of that has to do, David, with her running style. It's not like she's getting heavily outfinished or like overmatched by those foes. She just needs a little bit more luck, and she can't really make her own trip as much as some other horses might be able to. Do you give her a shot in here?
Yeah, this is going to be a theme as we go through this race. Just so many of these horses don't have any early speed, and she's certainly one of them. Just going to be out the back door early, and is going to have to find a way to make up that ground. And even that, she just has to run faster against tougher company than she's met before. So it's a step up in class for her, but she is a horse that's coming off one of her better efforts last time.
The number 3, Mrs. Astor. We can say that that mile and a half race a couple starts back might have been a little too much for her. And if we eliminate that race when she was 50-1 against pretty tough company, she comes back and she wins the red carpet last time out. Her win, though, I always like pointing out, was in this race, and the favorite in here, the horse who finished second, the 3-5 favorite, had a brutal trip in this race and may have actually been best. So while I respect Mrs. Astor quite a bit, the horse who was running at her on the outside did not get the best of trips there.
Yeah, with this race being the Friday race of the day, you could head over to DRF.com and get free formulator PPs for this race and actually look up that replay of the red carpet because we showed the stretch run, but you want to maybe dial it back to the half-mile pole to see all that trouble that Forever After All got in, and she would have beaten Mrs. Astor pretty clearly if the trips had been reversed. So with that in mind, I kind of view that grade 3 victory for Mrs. Astor with a little bit of skepticism, and it seems like she's a horse that's taken a step forward, going those marathon distances, now cutting back to the mile and 1/8. I don't know if her late kick is going to be quite as potent, and she's another one that just doesn't have much early speed.
Yeah, how far back is she going to be early on? That hopefully won't be the case with Rashmi if Rashmi runs in this spot. She's got improving buyers in her last 4 races, and yeah, she's not a stakes foe yet. She hasn't been in any stakes races, but this is certainly not a field with any monsters. And if she is improving and we project her to improve those speed figures again, like she has been, she would be right up into the low 90s and very competitive with this group. And the advantage that she'll have in here, hopefully the tactical advantage on this group in a race where there aren't any real monsters, it's a good spot for her to take a shot against like a graded stakes group like this.
Yeah, she's a horse who's stepping way up in class out of a couple of starter allowance races to now face graded stakes company. That's a pretty big leap, but she's been very visually impressive in the last couple starts. I mean, you don't typically see horses winning on the turf by open lengths the way that she's been. So she obviously is superior to the rivals that she's been facing, but she still is topped out at an 86 buyer. She's probably going to need another slight step forward to beat this field. The good news is she's a relatively lightly raced 3-year-old, seems to be doing well for a barn whose horses seem to hold their form once they come into it. So I respect Rashmi. I just kind of wonder what kind of price she's going to be in this race if she does wind up in here.
Omaha Girl did wire a stakes field at Gulfstream Park on the dirt back in September 23. And then we saw a couple starts back, one a non-winners of 2 race at Del Mar going a mile on the turf when sitting a pretty nice trip, kind of on the lead and did a little back and forth, but was forwardly placed. And you figure that's the trip she'll want to be getting in here, right? That would be her advantage over this group, being forwardly placed and not have to come from way out of it.
Yeah, I would say so. She's a horse who does seem like her speed could be her best weapon in this race. Just holding it together and, sustaining it against a field like this could be an issue for her because she's never really run that well against competition at this level. She tried grade 3 company in the Goldacova last time and was kind of ranked towards the inside, but could never really get anything going in the stretch even once she got clear. So just feels like a horse that might be a little overmatched.
Yeah, can she go this far also? That mile and 1/8, she'll have to get that extra distance here. We get to Moofy, the next one, grade 2 winner. She was an okay 4th last time out, but her last couple races, at that one in particular in the Matriarch, she was just facing a better group. You can see she was 20-1 there. And if you're just looking at odds, she's 7-2 here. So just comparing those fields, this one is a lot softer. If she were to run the same sort of speed figure based on buyers that she's been running, instead of finishing 4th or 7th, that's probably good enough to win or be right there in this race, David. So I'd have no problem with anyone wanting to take a shot with her. And she feels like if she is in that 7-2-ish range, there's probably pretty good value on her in this race.
Yeah, when I was initially watching back the Matriarch, I was kind of disappointed because she got a pretty good trip and just really didn't have anything to offer through the stretch. But then I was kind of reminding myself who was ahead of her, and all the horses that beat her that day would be heavy favorites in a spot like this. So I have to be somewhat forgiving her for Matriarch. And prior to that, she ran pretty well. I mean, look at the horse that she beat in the Dan Smartley 3 back at Woodbine. Horses like Nadette and Tax Implications, they'd be huge contenders in a race like this. And even the Goldacova, I mean, she is a horse that can get pretty rank occasionally in her races, and that was one of them when she was pulling very badly around the clubhouse turn onto the backstretch, and I think it kind of messed up her finish a little bit that day. But if Vincent Chemonos, who's ridden her well before, can get her to settle in this spot, I think she just fits this race really well.
Yeah, she chased a lone speed winner too in that Goldacova. So you go through those last couple of races, you can mention the tough company she's faced and maybe didn't get the type of trip she needs to win a race like this. So a major player in here. And then to the outside, probably the horse to beat, Hang the Moon. And you can understand why you take a shot in the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Turf. It's at Del Mar. She's really nice form. She won a couple races in a row. And she was only 16-1 in that race. She finished beating 5 lengths. So she was just overmatched by that group. But we get back to the John C. Maybe and the Rodeo Drive. these are good races, and she was 20-1 and then 9-1 right back. A lot of people didn't really believe that first graded stakes win, and they made her prove it again, and she did so here, David, in the Rodeo Drive. And I think this was a race that actually had a couple of more highly regarded horses that sort of felt like on paper it was going to be a 2-horse race between them, and she did not let that be the case. So the last couple times we saw her in races like this, she was winning at big prices. She won't be a big price, but she feels like the horse to beat.
Yeah, I think those accomplishments over the summer and fall of this year definitely does make her the horse to beat. But as you noted, she beat some good horses in those races like Anazette and Didia, but they didn't show up when
Not
she
at
beat
all.
them. So it kind of makes those fields a little bit weaker than maybe they looked going in, especially that was the case in the John C. Mabie. And we took a look at the replay of the Rodeo Drive. I mean, she's got a potent late kick when she is able to get the right pace set up as she did that day. Don't really care about the Breeders' Cup. I mean, she was never going to be competitive in a race like that. But now here, she's another horse that doesn't have that much early speed. And if they're not really moving up front, I wonder if she's going to have the necessary pace to close into. So I respect her form. I just don't know if she's going to get the trip.
Well, let's take a look at selections for this one in the Robert J. Frankel. David, how are you going to end up? You go to Mafi in here.
Yeah, of the three Jonathan Thomas runners, I just feel like Moofy is the class of the field. And while she's come from off the pace in recent starts, I think that she does have the tactical speed to sit a little bit closer to the pace than horses like Hang the Moon and Mrs. Astor. At least I'm hoping that's the case, breaking from post 6 of the 7-horse field.
See, I already did it again. I already went back to Mafi and Moofy. I'm going back and forth with them. However you say them, the number 6 is who David has placed on top in this one. I went to Rashmi. As I pointed out, I'm just not really scared of the major players all that much, the horses that will be the shortish prices. Now, I want to make sure that Rashmi is at least the 4-1, because that's the key. You want to get value if you're playing this horse with that tactical advantage, because she will need to step up and improve. And if she is in like the 7-2 range in that price, I don't know if you're getting enough value on her to like really want to go and get behind her. But I'll go 4-7-5-6, David 6-7-4-2. However you're playing them in the Robert J. Frankel, we wish you the best of luck on Friday at Santa Anita.